Welcome back to Healthy Mind, Healthy Life, the show where we talk about real, everyday mental wellness with people who have actually lived through what they are teaching. I'm Yusuf, and tonight's guest is someone whose story I have been looking forward to unpacking. She's an award winning CEO, entrepreneur, and author. She co founded a firm, bootstrapped it from zero, grew it into a INC 500 out of 5,000 company serving Fortune 100 brands, and was honored as most admired CEO. She wrote a book called The Rules of the Game for Women in Business, and she now spends her time helping women get unstuck, get in the room, and lead like they were always meant to. I'm talking about Catherine Lang-Cline, and I welcome her to the show.
Thank you so much for having me today.
Absolutely. So, Catherine, before we get into the business of business, I want to start somewhere a little softer. So, you mentioned in your own words that you bounced through several career paths early on before you found your footing. So, when you look back at that version of yourself, the one who did not know what was coming, what would you tell her now if you could sit across from her for 5 minutes?
I would tell her that she is gonna find where she belongs. I think in a lot of cases, especially when you start out your career, you take jobs that pay well, and maybe you take the job because you need a job, it gets sometimes could be a little desperate. But I was finding that as I was doing that, I was never in the right place, was never the right management style that I worked with. I always felt a little bit like an insider. I had a lot of ideas that nobody would really listen to. And, it came there like, an opportunity came up where somebody said, "Well, do you wanna start a business?" And I thought, "Well, maybe that's exactly what I should do." And I had always had a side hustle a little bit where, being a graphic designer, I would, do side projects and things like that, and, so I understood kind of the concept of running a company just from a small scale, but because I worked for larger companies, I saw how they were doing it, how they were doing billing and responsibilities and things like that, and really selling. So that alone was a great education for me. I think working for large companies was kind of like getting a master's degree in business. And I always like to tell people, learn on other people's money, and then you can start your own and make your own money. So after doing that for about 15 years, I decided to just go all in and start a real company that, that we could hire people and I could say I was the CEO of. And, but it was really based on, what my beliefs were, what my passions were that weren't being answered with other jobs. I was not getting that sort of fulfillment.
Okay. And you say you were not built to play small or follow someone else's rule, but that's a clarity most women don't arrive at quickly. So, was there a specific moment, maybe a meeting, a job, a remark, where you knew you could not keep doing the things that you'd been doing them?
Yeah, I always found myself really, reaching for more in every job. It's like, I wanna be promoted, I want to keep doing more, I want to keep taking more on, have more responsibility, and kind of just be kept in a little box of, "These are your responsibilities, and that's all you can do." When you start a business, you get to do everything, which is a gift and a curse in that you can't delegate anything, especially at the beginning. But, for me, it was just the time just seemed to be right to just, um start applying all the things that I had learned and did a little bit with confidence. Now, going all in, I think, is a mentality that everybody has to kind of accept. For me, it kind of started out as if I can't do this in 6 months, if I can't pay myself in 6 months, I'm going to have to get a job. And since I was doing all the work that a CEO should do, I was also networking too. So I could always just find a job with one of the people that I just talked with yesterday or something. But it went on for 20 years. So it worked. And I never missed a payment to myself, we always paid our bills, and it's not to say that, everything was easy, but I got to the point where got to be really good at problem solving too, and some of that taps into having a healthy mind versus one that is really all kinda wound up all the time. When you get really stressed, when you feel really under pressure, you almost become paralyzed with fear or how to make the next thing. But if you kind of just, live in that space where everything has flow, you can start to problem solve and figure out where you want to go. So, like, for example, within the first year of the company, I wanted to have one of those Fortune 500 companies that I used to work for be one of my clients. And that was just going to happen. I mean, I was like, we're going to get them and we're just going to figure out how. So it was based on just what I knew about so much about that company to know that I could do the work for them and convincing others that I understood their process and their values and things like that. They'd be foolish basically not to hire me because it was like having somebody already on the inside that really understood them
Mm.
and just figuring out different ways to get them to work with us. They put up a barrier, for example, or a barrier came up. Well, how do I get around this? And a lot of that was just based on a lot of the creativity and breathing room that I gave myself to just kind of move around. It's like, okay, if we can't go this way, then we're going this way. It was never a no. It was a not you now. Um,
Yeah.
so it was just kind of a process of being tenacious, being, reassuring that you're the expert and being creative on how you can get into those buildings and, open those doors.
Yeah. And yeah, that I think most stories skip. We hear about the leap, but we rarely hear about the weeks before it, like the fear in it, like the hard work that you are there. And when someone is just sitting with her knowing that they are not yet ready to act on, that waiting is on its own kind of a courage.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, and you kinda get this feeling in your gut that now is the time. I could have started a company, like, very young, like, right out of school, but I wasn't ready yet. And I had to get some experience. I had to make some connections. I had to understand how business operated. And that's a little bit where my book kind of came from because I was realizing as I was running into more and more women that had businesses that they were just doing it wrong. They were not playing the game, if you will, like everybody else was playing. And it is a business, a business is a situation that was started by men and we have to kind of accept that, and I'm not saying you have to go in and act like a man, but you at least have to understand where they're coming from and how they do business because then you can have better communication. If their, main goal is like, "We're gonna crush the competition and we're going to, you know, um, be really competitive," just know that, "Okay, I understand that that's what you wanna get out of this." Now, does that mean I have to use, um the same tactics? No, but I have to understand that that's what they're going for, and it really helps communicating with them as far as, trying to get new clients, how to get people on your team, and it's about creating that whole team mentality on everything, and once you show that you're a good team member, then people wanna do business with you.
Mm. Talking about your book is called The Rules of the Woman or Rules of the Game for Women in Business. I want to ask you about the title itself because the word rules is doing a lot of work there. It implies that there is a game, that there are rules, and the most women are not being taught about them. So, what is the one rule you wish someone had handed you on the day one of your career?
Oh, that's a good question. Um, I think it would be just to know that everything that have been taught as a woman is not gonna work in business. And I think that is because women are taught to and there's nothing wrong with these qualities, to share and be compassionate and be giving and give and give and give. And when you get into the big leagues, especially with business, nobody's doing any of that. I mean, people hire and fire based on their end goals and their scorecards and who's the best player and all these terms, people get the ball passed to them when they're good. If you're lousy, you'll never see the ball. And um just know that whole I'm gonna share or I'm gonna give up my space as a woman because that's how women operate is not how you get success in business. And like I said, it's great uh to be woven into some of the things as far as being successful, but in order to be successful, you have to think on a with a different playbook, if you will. And I refer to it a lot of where, women kinda show up to a, um, a football game and they're wearing, skates or they're wearing skis or things like that. They're like, "Well, I thought we're playing this game." We're like, "No, we're not playing that at all. It's something entirely different." And when you really kind of study what do I need to be successful on this field, then it becomes a lot easier. And that goes even just like when people, you know, um, I can't think of the word, but like you try and get other players maybe on your team to that so your team is more successful. That people will pick and choose, and there's some people that never get to play. They drop down, they get to stay in the amateur level, and sometimes people
Yeah.
just get really comfortable at that level. But I'm like, if you want to play in the big leagues, you have to play the game.
Mm. And why do you think that rule is not being passed down? Is it that nobody wants to say it loud, or that the women who learned it are too tired to come back and teach it?
I think like I said, I think women sometimes come in thinking that they're going to change the game
Mhm.
with what they have. It's like, well, why can't we all just be friendly and nice and share? And it's not that at all. And women will sometimes put each other down when they're not like that. So, for example, if I say I'm ambitious, some women will kind of say, "Ugh, I don't know if I like her because she's ambitious." But if a guy says he's ambitious, it's seen differently. If a woman, projects her feelings on something, people automatically think, "Oh, she's mean." They have other words for that. And, rather than, really thinking about whether or not she is saying something that's important. And it's mostly women that kind of, um, kind of bully other women into thinking like, "No, you have to be more like us. You can't be
Yeah.
like them." And I think sometimes women get scared to step out of that safe zone of being like everybody else.
Mm. And that is such an honest answer. The women who made it through often had to pay such a high personal price that turning around and mentoring become its own emotional labor.
Right, right, and honestly, we've only been in the game, if you will, not that long, since maybe, like,
Yeah.
the '70s or '80s did women start getting real jobs before they were secretaries and assistants and things like that, nurses, they got to be nurses and teachers, and that was really kind of it. I mean, my mother-in-law was a nurse because that was one of the options that she was given, and she's still alive, so it's not that long ago. So for the most part, women are really, really new to getting into some of these tighter situations. And I'm just saying, if you practice, you come prepared, you'll be accepted. I mean, I think sometimes people think that sometimes women feel like they're not allowed in, and you are. I have so many men that are champions for me because they believe in what I do, they know I'm a good team player, so they'll speak up for me. But if you're not, then they're like, "Okay, well, you can just go sit down. Go sit on the bench, and we'll call you when we need you."
Yeah. What? Yeah. So, for listeners tuning in tonight who are mid career, who are quietly ambitious, who are watching less talented people get promoted ahead of them and not understanding why. So, what would you tell them is the inner shift they need to make first before any outer strategy will work?
Well, this is, precisely why I wrote the book because does get very introspective on why you're not doing these things because we like to live in a space of comfort, everybody does, women more so. And when they start crossing over, they run this risk of, losing friends. Maybe they start making more money than their spouse or partner. They might start getting a little more alienated. They might have less time for their children. And all of these things are seen as things that women shouldn't do. Again, the women should not be ambitious. Women should not say, "I want to, conquer the world," sort of thing. Because it's just not they're not used to hearing that. So get out of your own head with that. What is stopping you from doing that? Is it somebody told you once that, this is a cute little job you have, you shouldn't want anything more than that? Do you have a partner or spouse that gets really uncomfortable if you start doing better than them? I look at it as,
Mm.
with my husband, it's, we're all in this together. So if I do well, you do well. And, it's really kind of having that sort of understanding. But a lot of it is just fear-based things. I've mentored women that have said, "I don't wanna make more than my husband because he likes to be the breadwinner." That's lovely, but what do you want? Do you want this company to be bigger? And, how do you kinda get to that spot? So we disqualify ourselves a lot. A lot of people, I hate to say, use the excuse of, "I got so much to do. I have to take care of the children. I have to do whatever." You can delegate a lot of that. That's what I did. I have a great relationship with my daughter, um, but I she was in daycare and she was in school and she was, I had my husband would help. We can do things by just figuring it out, but you have to get past that mental block first.
I think that is exactly the kind of practical angle people need, because the abstract advice is everywhere, but the actual advice that they can follow on a Tuesday morning is what actually changes a career.
Exactly. Exactly.
Catherine, you built and sold a multi-million dollar business over 20 years, which is a long time to, uh, yeah. So you built and sold a multi-billion dollar business over 20 years, which is a long time to hold the weight of a company. I want to ask you about a side of entrepreneurship that does not get talked about enough: the mental and emotional toll of being the one everyone is depending on. So, what did the hard seasons of building that company do to you internally, and what did you have to put in place to stable?
That is an excellent question because the only way you can sell a company is if it can run without you. That makes it way more attractive to say, "You can take this company and I don't have to be there," because the last thing they want is for some CEO to be hanging on and still telling you what to do. So I, made sure that the team could run everything, all the day-to-day stuff. I just turned myself into the voice of the company, the passion of the company, the true CEO. So I would promote the company as much as possible, but all the day-to-day stuff was done by somebody else. So when I was able to present the company for sale, I could again say, I don't have to be there. You can take this and just go, and I'll hang around for a little bit to make sure everything is smooth and we all are under the same understanding of how this operates. I'm here for the clients, for example, that are really attached to me and just say, you're in good hands now. You've worked with this person, you love them, but it's time for me to just move on. So that is super key is to make sure that it can run without you. And that is probably the most challenging thing for owners is because they always like to be in it in some regard. Their fingers are in all the pies and it's like, if hire people that are better than you in some instances too, like if you know somebody who's better at you in sales or accounting or recruiting or whatever, hire those people and then start giving those projects away, those tasks away, and you start becoming this whole separate thing. And once that's in place, then you're ready to sell.
And was there ever a moment where you thought you might not make it, like mentally, and what got you through?
I knew that I would have enough talent to at least get a job if this all blew up. It was, a case where I'd say, "If this doesn't work, I know I can go back to being a graphic designer, or I can go back to doing some other thing, and I could help somebody else set up a company." I knew I had talent to do something else. There were not a ton of stressful days in that not to say there weren't any, we had a fair amount, but each time that something would come up, I saw it more of as a problem-solving exercise versus now we've done it. We're in trouble. We're gonna get sued. We're gonna get, audited or whatever. I started talking to other people that had businesses. Did you have this problem? How did you fix it? What can we do to make this client happy? How do we get, just constant swirling of ideas, 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 to get through each situation. And each situation was typically very unique. So we might have to attack it in a different way. But, once you started getting in this flow of problem solving, if something came up, you're like, that's okay. We're going to figure it out. We'll figure this out somehow. What did other people do? Who could I talk to that had the same problem? And really having some mentors or people that you admire close that can help you talk through some things, because sometimes at the top, it's just you in your own head and you only know so much. Be, truly honest with yourself and saying, maybe I can't figure this out. I have to talk to somebody else about it. I found people to be very generous with their time when I could when I would ask for help, and they would walk me through something. Here's some of your options. Here's some things that you can do legally. Here's some things that you might want to avoid. But it was never really that many days. I'm not going to say entirely none, but not that many days where I did not lose sleep because I felt like I could figure it out.
Catherine, for people who want to connect with you or want to learn more about your work, where can they do that?
They can go into my website, which is catherinelangcline.com, nice and simple, but no dashes in there, just all one word. And that is where they can find a link to my book. They can, find all the information about me there, or LinkedIn. LinkedIn's always a great place too. I'm on there and I'm always accepting invitations.
Perfect. And to everyone listening, all these links are in the show notes, so just go and check those out.
Perfect.
Catherine, is there any last message that you want to leave us with?
I just want people to know that if they have a passion for something, that they can do it. And it might not necessarily be, don't think about it as I need to have a multi-million dollar company initially. That just kind of happened. It really kinda grew organically based on a passion that we had to find the right people for the right jobs, because I had a staffing company, and I knew specifically I wanted to deal with creative people, so we just became the best at it, and I was truly passionate about making those fits right. And then it just happened, because more people start getting interested in what you do, that you have this passion for something, that you believe in something, and it gets a little infectious, and that's how it kinda catches on. But honestly, if you just have even a small company and you're doing something that you truly, truly love, there's nothing better than that, and you can make a living on it, my god, that's awesome, you know?
Mm.
So, just really think about what it is that you love, love, love doing, and the rest was just kind of, you know, it just happened.
Yeah. That is our time on Healthy Mind, Healthy Life tonight. Catherine, thank you so much for coming and sharing your knowledge, your experience, and your story. This has been a very important perspective for me as well, seeing a very successful woman running a business and then passing on the torch to other women who wants the same. Thank you so
Yes.
much for that.
Yes. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you giving me some time today.
Absolutely. And if tonight something Catherine said tonight made you sit a little straighter, send this episode to a woman in your life who needs to hear. Ambition is not the opposite of mental illness. It is a part of it when it is pointed in the right direction. Take a good care of yourself this week. We'll be back here very soon.